"There's only one rule," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear it, "I will never touch you." The words should have comforted me, but they didn't. They made everything worse. I stood there in a white dress that wasn't mine, in a room that didn't feel real, marrying a man old enough to be my grandfather. My hands were cold. Not shaking. Just empty. Like my body had already decided to survive this by feeling nothing at all. Victor Hale didn't look at me the way men were supposed to look at their brides. There was no hunger. No pride. No ownership. Just control. Absolute, suffocating control. The kind that didn't need to be loud. The kind that made an entire room fall silent without a single word. The officiant kept talking. Something about vows. Something about commitment. I didn't hear any of it. All I could hear was that sentence repeating in my head. I will never touch you. It didn't make sense. Nothing about this made sense. 2 days ago, I was standing in our tiny kitchen, staring at overdue bills stacked like bricks around my life. Rent. Medical debt. Numbers that didn't just add up, they crushed. My dad couldn't even look at me when he said it. I tried, he whispered, like that would fix anything. Like trying mattered when men in dark suits were already knocking on our door. They didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They just stood there. Calm. Patient. Certain. Mr. Hale would like to settle this personally. That was the moment everything shifted. Not when they said the amount. Not when my dad started shaking. But when I saw the way they waited. Like they already knew how it would end. Like my choice had been made long before I even knew I had one. And then I met him. Victor Hale. 65 years old. Perfectly tailored suit. Silver at his temples. Eyes that didn't miss anything. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. You can't pay, he said simply. Not cruel. Not kind. Just, final. I swallowed. What do you want? He looked at me then. Really looked. Not at my face. At everything. Like he was reading a contract written in my bones. Marry me. That was it. No explanation. No negotiation. Just terms. I laughed. I actually laughed. Because it sounded insane. Because it had to be a joke. But no one else laughed. Not my dad. Not the men behind him. And definitely not Victor Hale. Or, he added quietly, we proceed differently. He didn't explain what that meant. He didn't have to. I said yes before I could think. Before I could breathe. Before I could understand what I was giving up. Because some choices aren't choices. They're exits. And this was the only one that didn't destroy everything. So now I stood here. In a dress that fit too perfectly. In a room filled with strangers who didn't care. Saying vows I didn't believe in to a man I didn't know. Do you take? Yes, I said too quickly. My voice sounded distant. Like it belonged to someone else. Victor's gaze flickered, just for a second. Not surprise. Something else. Something I couldn't name. The ring slid onto my finger. Cold. Heavy. Permanent. And then it was done. Just like that. I was his wife. Not owned. Not touched. Not even claimed the way I expected. Just, bound. He leaned closer as the room began to move again, people talking, glasses clinking, life continuing like this wasn't a transaction disguised as a wedding. His voice brushed against my ear, steady and controlled. You're safe as long as you follow the rule. Safe. The word echoed louder than anything else. I turned to look at him, really look this time. At the man who could have taken everything. Who chose instead to draw a line I didn't understand. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something crack through the numbness. Not relief. Not fear. Something worse. Curiosity. Because men like Victor Hale didn't make rules like that without a reason. And I had just married the kind of secret that changes everything. The first night in his house did not feel like a wedding night. It felt like entering a place that had already decided who I was before I walked in. The car ride lasted exactly 32 minutes. I counted every single one. Not because I cared about the distance, but because silence stretched too far when he was in it. Victor Hale sat beside me, hands folded, eyes forward. He did not look at me once. Not when the city lights faded. Not when the gates opened. Not even when the car stopped in front of a mansion that looked more like a private museum than a home. "This is where you will stay," he said, opening the door himself. Not a driver. Not security. Him. That should have meant something. It did not. I stepped out, heels sinking slightly into the stone path, my dress brushing against the ground like it belonged to someone else. The air felt different here. Cleaner. Controlled. Like even the wind followed rules. Inside, everything was quiet. No laughter. No music. Just the faint echo of footsteps and the soft hum of something expensive I could not name. A woman in her 50s approached, dressed in a neat uniform, her expression calm but unreadable. "Mrs. Hale," she said gently, and the title hit harder than the ring. Not Emily. Not anything I recognized. Just a name that came with conditions. "Your room is ready." My room. Not ours. I glanced at Victor. He gave a small nod, already turning away, already done with me for the night. "You will find everything you need," he added without looking back. "If you do not, ask." That was it. No welcome. No explanation. Just instructions. I followed the woman down a long hallway lined with closed doors. Every step echoed like I was being measured. Judged. Filed into place. When the door opened, I stopped. The room was bigger than our entire apartment. Soft lighting. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A bed that looked untouched, like no one had ever actually slept in it. "Your belongings have been arranged," she said, gesturing toward a closet. I walked over slowly, pulling it open. Clothes. Dozens of them. My size. My style. Things I had never owned but somehow recognized. Like someone had studied me without permission. I closed the door quickly. How did he know? I asked before I could stop myself. The woman hesitated. Just for a second. "Mr. Hale prefers to be prepared." Of course he did. I nodded, dismissing her, needing the silence more than I needed answers. The door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time since the ceremony, I was alone. I stood there for a long moment, staring at my reflection in the glass. White dress. Perfect hair. A stranger. Staring back. I reached up, touching the ring again. Still cold. Still heavy. Still real. I waited for something to happen. For a door to open. For footsteps to return. For the rule to break. But nothing did. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then more. No one came. He did not come. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. He meant it. The rule was real. "I will never touch you." I should have felt relieved. Safe. Instead, I felt something twist inside my chest. Because if this was not about control, then what was it about? I walked to the door slowly, opening it just enough to look into the hallway. Empty. quiet. Untouched. Like the entire house was holding its breath. I stepped back inside and closed the door again, leaning against it, my mind racing in circles that did not land anywhere solid. Men like Victor Hale did not marry for nothing. They did not protect without purpose. And they definitely did not create rules that limited their own power. I looked down at the ring one more time, my voice barely more than a whisper. What did I just become? The silence did not answer. But somehow, it felt like the house already knew. I woke up before the house did, or maybe the house never slept at all. The light coming through the tall windows was soft, filtered, like even the sun needed permission to enter this place. For a moment, I forgot where I was. That fragile second between dreaming and remembering. Then I felt it. The weight on my finger. The silence around me. The reality settled back in, slow and suffocating. I sat up, the sheets still perfectly smooth around me. Untouched. Just like he promised. I do not know why that bothered me more this morning than it did last night. Maybe because promises from men like Victor Hale are not supposed to make you feel safe. They are supposed to make you feel owned. I walked to the window, looking out over a stretch of land that did not look like it belonged to anyone. No neighbors. No noise. Just distance. The kind that makes running feel pointless before you even try. A soft knock broke the silence. Mrs. Hale, the same calm voice from last night. I opened the door to find her. Already holding a tray. Coffee. Toast. Fruit arranged too perfectly to be real. Mr. Hale requests that you join him for breakfast, she said. Requests. Not orders. Another word that did not fit. Where? I asked. Dining room. Down the main hall. I nodded, taking a sip of the coffee before she left. It was warm. Exactly how I liked it. Of course it was. I changed quickly, choosing the simplest outfit from the closet. Something that still felt like me, even if everything else did not. The hallway seemed longer this morning. Or maybe I was just more aware of it. Every step felt like walking into something I did not understand. When I reached the dining room, I paused at the entrance. Victor was already there. Sitting at the head of a table that could seat 12, alone, reading something on a tablet. He did not look up right away. He did not need to. You are late, he said calmly. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 8:03. By 3 minutes, I replied before I could stop myself. His eyes lifted then. Sharp. Assessing. Not angry. Just aware. Time is not measured the same way in this house, he said, setting the tablet down. Sit. I did. Across from him. The distance between us felt intentional. Measured. Like even the space was part of the rule. Plates were already set. Food still warm. Someone had prepared all of this before I even woke up. You sleep well? He asked. I hesitated. I slept, I answered. He nodded once, like that was enough. Silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. Less empty. More, controlled. Like he was waiting for something. Or testing something. I set my fork down. Why me? The question came out quieter than I expected. He did not react immediately. Just took a sip of his coffee, placing the cup down with precise control. Your father made a series of decisions, he said. Those decisions required resolution. That does not answer my question. His gaze shifted to me fully now. Not cold. Not warm. Just direct. No, he agreed. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, you were the most efficient solution. Efficient. The word landed flat. Heavy. Like I was a problem that needed solving. I looked down at my plate, then back at him. And the rule? His expression changed. Not much. Just enough that I noticed. The rule, he repeated slowly, is not for you. I frowned. Then who is it for? He held my gaze for exactly 3 seconds. Long enough to make my chest tighten. It is for me. That answer did something I was not prepared for. It shifted the ground under everything I thought I understood. Because control I could understand. Ownership I could fight. But a rule that limits him, that was something else entirely. Something more dangerous. I leaned back slightly, studying him in a way I had not allowed myself to before. You married me, I said carefully. But you do not want anything from me. He did not answer right away. His fingers tapped once against the table. A small movement. Almost invisible. That is where you are wrong, he said quietly. My breath caught. Then what do you want? This time, he did not look away. Obedience, he said. And patience. The words were simple. Controlled. But underneath them, something else moved. Something I could not see yet. Something that made me realize this was not a prison. Not exactly. It was something more precise. More intentional. I picked up my fork again, my hand steadier than I felt. And if I do not give you that? His expression did not change. Not even a flicker. You will, he said calmly. Not a threat. Not a warning. Just certainty. And somehow, that was worse. The rest of the day unfolded like a routine I had never agreed to but somehow was expected to follow. After breakfast, Victor left without explanation. No goodbye. No instructions. Just absence. And yet, everything around me continued as if his presence still filled every corner. Doors opened before I reached them. Staff appeared without being called. Meals arrived exactly when I started to feel hungry, like the house itself was watching me. Anticipating me. I tried to ignore it. I walked through the halls, slow at first, then faster, mapping the place in my head like it would give me some kind of control. Left turn past the staircase. 3 doors down, a sitting room. Another hallway that led to a library filled with books that looked untouched. But carefully selected. Everything was deliberate. Nothing was random. Even the silence felt placed. I stepped outside in the afternoon, needing air that did not feel filtered through someone else's rules. The ground stretched farther than I expected. Acres of green, trimmed perfectly, interrupted only by a long driveway and a distant gate that looked more symbolic than functional. I walked toward it anyway. Not because I thought I could leave, but because I needed to know how far I could go before something stopped me. 10 yards. 20. 50. No one followed. No voice called me back. No hand reached out. I slowed as I got closer, my heart beating faster for no reason I could explain. The gate stood tall, black iron, elegant but firm. I could see the road beyond it. Open. Empty. Free. I reached out, touching the cold metal. It did not move. Of course it did not. I let out a small breath, more frustration than surprise. You can leave if you want. His voice came from behind me, calm as ever. I froze. Not because he startled me. Because I did not hear him approach. I turned slowly. Victor stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, his gaze steady. The gate opens from the inside, he added. I looked back at the gate, then at him. Then why is it closed? Because you have not asked for it to open. That answer sat between us, heavy with something I could not immediately define. So I just ask, I said carefully, and you let me go? Yes. No hesitation. No condition. Just yes. I searched his face for something. A trick. A hidden clause. But there was nothing there except that same controlled certainty. And my father's debt? I asked. His expression did not change. Resolved. Just like that? Just like that. The simplicity of it made my chest tighten. Because if it was that easy, then why was I still here? I stepped closer to him, narrowing the distance slightly. You are telling me I can walk out of here right now, I said, and everything is over. Yes. The word echoed louder this time. I turned back to the gate. My hand hovered over the latch. One step. That was all it would take. One step and I could go back to my life. Small. Messy. Mine. But something stopped me. Not fear. Not obligation. Something else. I lowered my hand slowly. There is something you are not saying, I whispered. Silence followed. Not empty this time. Waiting. I turned back to him again, my voice steadier. People like you do not give choices without reasons. His eyes held mine, unblinking. No, he agreed quietly. We do not. So what is the reason? Another pause. Shorter. Tighter. Then, because if you stay, he said, it will be your decision. The words landed differently than anything else he had said so far. Not control. Not command. Something deeper. Something that made the space between us feel smaller without either of us moving. I looked at the gate one last time, then back at him. And if I leave? His jaw tightened just slightly. The smallest shift I had seen from him. Then you leave, he said. Simple. Clean. Final. I nodded slowly, stepping away from the gate, the decision settling into place before I fully understood it. I am not leaving, I said. Not because I trusted him. Not because I felt safe. But because I needed to know why a man like Victor Hale would give me a way out, and expect me not to take it. His gaze softened. Just enough that I almost missed it. Good, he said quietly. And for the first time, it did not sound like ownership. It sounded like relief. I did not expect the house to feel different after that moment at the gate, but it did. Not in the way the walls looked or the hall stretched, but in the way the silence settled around me. It was no longer just quiet. It was aware. Like something had shifted the second I chose to stay. Victor did not say anything else after that. He simply turned and walked back toward the house, expecting me to follow without asking. And I did. Not because I had to. But because I wanted to understand what I had just stepped into. Dinner was set for exactly 7 o'clock. Of course it was. I arrived at 6:58, not wanting to test his definition of time again. He was already there, seated at the same position as before, a glass of water untouched in front of him. No wine. No excess. Just control. I sat across from him, the distance once again precise. Measured. Intentional. You adapted quickly, he said without looking up. To what? I asked. To staying. I did not answer right away. Instead, I picked up my fork, moving food around my plate more than actually eating it. I have not decided anything yet, I said finally. His gaze lifted then, calm but direct. You decided the moment you stepped away from the gate. The certainty in his voice made my chest tighten. Not because he was wrong. But because he sounded like he had already known what I would do. You seem very sure of me, I said. I am, he replied simply. Silence fell again, but it felt different tonight. Less like a test. More like observation. Like he was studying something he had already chosen to invest in. I set my fork down, meeting his eyes. You said you want obedience, I said. And patience. Yes. What does that actually mean? He leaned back slightly, his fingers resting lightly against the table. It means, he said slowly, you do not leave the property without informing me. I frowned. That sounds like control. It is structure, he corrected calmly. It is also for your safety. I almost laughed at that. Safety from what? His expression did not change, but something behind his eyes sharpened. Not anger. Not quite. Just awareness. From consequences you do not yet understand, he said. That answer did not comfort me. It did the opposite. You keep saying things like that, I pressed. Like I am part of something bigger than I agreed to. You are, he said. No hesitation. No apology. Just truth. I leaned back, crossing my arms, trying to steady the frustration building under my skin. Then explain it to me. Another pause. This one longer. He looked at me carefully, like weighing something. Not yet, he said. Of course. Not yet. Always just out of reach. So I am supposed to just wait, I said, my voice tightening, follow rules I do not understand, trust a man I barely know, and hope it all makes sense eventually? He studied me for a moment, then nodded once. Yes. The simplicity of it almost made me laugh again, but something stopped me. Because he was not mocking me. He was not dismissing me. He was being completely serious. That was what made it harder. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. You realize how that sounds, right? Yes, he said again. And you still expect me to do it? You will, he replied, just as calmly as before. Not because he believed I had no choice. But because he believed I would choose to. That was the difference. And somehow, that made it harder to fight. I looked down at my hands, at the ring that still felt too heavy for something so quiet. What happens if I break the rule? I asked quietly. The question lingered between us. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just, real. He did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was softer than before. Then I will have to break mine. My breath caught. I looked up quickly, searching his face for anything that would explain what that meant. But he gave me nothing. No detail. No warning. Just that single line. And suddenly, for the first time since this began, the rule did not feel like protection anymore. It felt like a line neither of us was supposed to cross. And I was not sure which side of it was more dangerous. I did not sleep that night. Not really. My body rested, but my mind stayed awake, circling the same sentence over and over again. Then I will have to break mine. It echoed in the quiet like a warning that had not decided what it wanted to be yet. Morning came too quickly, soft light creeping across the room like nothing had changed. But everything had. I could feel it. The rule was no longer just his. It was something I carried too now. Something fragile. Something dangerous. I got dressed slower than usual, choosing each piece carefully, like it somehow mattered. Like he would notice. I hated that thought the moment it crossed my mind. I stepped into the hallway and stopped. Two men I had not seen before stood near the far end. Dark suits. Still posture. Not moving, but not ignoring me either. Watching without staring. The air felt tighter. Controlled in a different way. I walked past them, keeping my pace steady, refusing to show the shift I felt inside. Something had changed. And I had a feeling it was not just me. Breakfast was already set when I arrived, but Victor was not there. The chair at the head of the table sat empty, the space feeling larger because of it. I sat down anyway, the silence pressing in around me. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Just as I stood to leave, he walked in. Not rushed. Not apologetic. Just present. "You are early," he said, like last night had not happened. Like he had not drawn a line that neither of us could ignore now. "You are late," I replied, matching his tone. His eyes flickered. Just for a second. Not irritation. Recognition. He took his seat without another word, and for a moment, it felt almost normal. Almost. "There are additional staff on the property today," he said after a few seconds. I glanced toward the hallway, thinking of the men I had seen. I noticed. "You will remain inside the house." There it was again. Structure. Control. "That sounds like a rule," I said. "It is a precaution," he corrected. "From consequences I do not understand?" I added quietly. His gaze met mine, steady and unreadable. Yes. The honesty in that answer should have reassured me. It did not. It made everything sharper. "You said I could leave," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I can still walk out that gate." "You can," he agreed. "Then why the change?" He did not answer right away. Instead, he picked up his coffee, taking a slow sip like time moved differently for him. Like urgency did not apply. "Because now," he said finally, "someone else knows you are here." The words landed quietly. But they changed everything. My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" I asked. He set the cup down carefully, his fingers resting against the edge of the table. "It means," he said, "you are no longer invisible." Invisible. The word felt strange. Like something I had never thought about until it was gone. "And that makes me a problem?" I asked. "It makes you visible," he repeated. "Not the same thing. But not better either." I leaned forward slightly, my voice lower now. "And your solution is to keep me inside." "My solution," he said calmly, "is to keep you safe." There it was again. That word. Safe. It sounded different now. Heavier. More complicated. "Safe means staying," he added. "Safe means patience." I held his gaze, searching. For something real beneath the control. Something human. "And if I do not want to stay safe?" I asked. The question hung between us, quiet but sharp. His expression did not change. Not on the surface. But something in his eyes shifted. Something colder. Something final. "Then you misunderstand what is at risk," he said. I felt my breath catch, not from fear, but from the weight of something I could not fully see yet. I leaned back slowly, the room suddenly feeling smaller than before. Not because the walls had moved. But because I had stepped into something that was already closing in. I looked at him one more time, my voice steady despite everything tightening inside me. "You married me to protect me," I said. "Or to control the damage?" His gaze held mine for a long second. Then, quietly, both. And somehow, that was the first honest answer that made sense. I started noticing the cameras that afternoon. Not obvious ones. Not the kind you see in stores or on street corners. These were smaller. Tucked into corners. Hidden in plain sight. You would miss them if you were not looking for them. But now I was. And once you see something like that, you cannot unsee it. I stood in the library, pretending to read, but my eyes kept drifting to the same spot above the bookshelf. A small black dot. Still. Silent. Watching. "You are looking at the wrong thing." His voice came from the doorway, calm as ever. I did not turn right away. "Am I?" I asked quietly. Yes, Victor said, stepping inside. The cameras are not what you should be concerned about. That made me turn. Slowly. Then what should I be concerned about? He did not answer immediately. Instead, he walked further into the room, his steps measured, his presence filling the space without effort. Patterns, he said finally. Changes. Things that do not belong. I frowned slightly. Like what? His gaze met mine, steady and sharp. Like you. The words should have sounded like an accusation. But they did not. They sounded like a fact. I crossed my arms, leaning back against the table. I already know I do not belong here, I said. That is not what I meant. He stopped a few feet away, the distance between us once. Again deliberate. Always deliberate. You were not part of this world yesterday, he continued. Today, you are at the center of it. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear. Not yet. Just awareness. And that makes me visible, I said, repeating his word from earlier. Yes. Silence settled between us again, heavier this time. So what happens when someone decides they do not like what they see? I asked. He did not look away. Then I make sure they stop looking. His tone did not change. Not threatening. Not emotional. Just certain. I held his gaze, searching for something beneath the control. That sounds like protection, I said slowly. It is, he replied. But it also sounds like control, I added. It is that too. There it was again. No denial. No softening. Just truth, clean and sharp. I pushed off the table, stepping closer without thinking. Closing the distance slightly. Testing something I did not fully understand. You keep saying both, I said. Protection and control. Safety and restriction. Which one is real? His eyes followed my movement, not surprised, not unsettled. Just aware. Both are real, he said. The difference is whether you understand why. I stopped a few feet from him, my heart beating a little faster now. Not from fear. From something else. Something that felt dangerously close to curiosity again. Then make me understand, I said. A pause. Short. Controlled. Then, not yet. Of course. Always not yet. I let out a small breath, shaking my head slightly. You expect a lot of patience from someone you barely explain anything to. Yes, he said again. Always yes. I studied him for a long moment, trying to see past the surface. Past the calm. Past the control. And what are you being patient for? I asked quietly. That question landed differently. I could see it. Not in his expression. But in the stillness that followed. Like something inside him paused. Calculated. Adjusted. For you to realize something on your own, he said finally. My brow furrowed. What? He held my gaze for exactly 3 seconds. Long enough to make the silence feel intentional. That leaving was never the dangerous choice, he said. My breath caught. Then what is? I asked. His voice dropped slightly. Not softer. Just closer. More precise. Staying without understanding, he said. The words settled into the room like a quiet warning. I felt it then. The shift. The realization that this was not just about rules or safety or control. It was about something deeper. Something I had not fully seen yet. I stepped back slightly, the space between us returning to its careful distance. And you think I will figure that out on my own? I asked. He nodded once. I know you will. The certainty in his voice did something I could not ignore anymore. It made this feel less like a trap. And more like a test I had already agreed to take. I glanced back at the camera above the shelf, then at him again. "You are not watching me," I said slowly. "You are waiting." His expression did not change. But something in his eyes did. Something quieter. Something almost human. "Yes," he said. And for the first time. I was not sure which of us was more exposed. The house felt smaller that night, even though nothing about it had changed. The same walls. The same quiet. The same controlled rhythm that never broke. But I felt it now. The difference between being inside something, and being part of it. I stood in front of the window in my room, staring out at the darkness beyond the glass. The ground stretched endlessly, but the shadows felt closer tonight. Not threatening. Just aware. Like something out there knew I was no longer invisible. His words from earlier would not leave my head. Staying without understanding. That was the dangerous choice. And I had already made it. A soft knock came at exactly 9:15. Not 9:14. Not 9:16. Exactly 9:15. I opened the door to find one of the staff members holding a small envelope. No tray this time. No practiced calm smile. Just quiet efficiency. "This was delivered for you," she said. Delivered. The word did not belong here. Nothing reached this house without being controlled. I took the envelope slowly, feeling the weight of it in my hand. Light. Too light to matter. But somehow it did. "Who brought it?" I asked. She hesitated. Just a fraction. "It was already at the gate," she said. That was not an answer. But it was the only one I was going to get. I closed the door and turned the envelope over in my hands. No name. No return address. Just blank white paper that felt too deliberate to be random. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph. My breath caught before I even looked down. Because I already knew this was not going to be nothing. The image was simple. A street corner. Familiar. Too familiar. I recognized it instantly. My old neighborhood. The place I had walked past 100 times without thinking. But this time, it looked different. Not because of what was there. But because of how it was captured. The angle. The distance. The focus. It was not a memory. It was surveillance. I flipped the photo over. One line. Printed cleanly across the back. "You were easier to find than he thought." My fingers tightened around the paper, my pulse suddenly louder than the silence around me. He thought. Not they. He. Victor. I moved before I could think, the door already open, my steps quick and sharp against the floor as I made my way down the hall. I did not knock when I reached his office. I pushed the door open. He was there. Of course he was. Standing near the window, his posture still, his attention already on me before I spoke. "Someone sent this," I said, holding up the photo, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. He did not move right away. His eyes flicked to the image, then back to me. Calm. Too calm. "I know," he said. That stopped me. "You know?" I stepped closer, placing the photo on his desk. "Then you know what this means?" "Yes. Always yes. Always certain." I shook my head slightly, frustration rising under my skin. "Then say it." He looked at the photo again, then back at me, his expression unchanged but heavier somehow. "It means," he said slowly, "that the window we had is closing." The words landed quietly. But they changed everything. "Window for what?" I asked. His gaze held mine, steady and direct. For you to choose this on your own, he said. My chest tightened. And now? A pause. Short. Final. Now, he said, the choice becomes more complicated. I stared at him, the weight of everything pressing in at once. The rule. The protection. The control. The waiting. It was never just about me staying. It was about how long I could stay before the world outside decided for me. I looked down at the photo again, then back at him, my voice quieter now. You knew this would happen. It was not a question. He did not deny it. Yes. Of course. I let out a slow breath, something inside me settling into place. Not calm. Not fear. Something sharper. Clearer. Then why give me the illusion of choice? I asked. His eyes softened. Just slightly. Enough to matter. Because it was not an illusion, he said. I held his gaze, searching for something real beneath the control. And now? I asked again. This time, his answer came without pause. Now, he said, you need to understand why the rule exists. The room felt smaller. The silence heavier. Because for the first time, he was not asking for patience anymore. He was preparing me for something I could not step away from. He did not move when I stepped closer, but something in the room shifted anyway. Not louder. Not sharper. Just, inevitable. Then explain it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. No more, not yet. No more waiting. Victor watched me for a long moment, like he was measuring whether I was ready to hear something I could not unhear. Then he nodded once. The rule exists, he said slowly, because the moment I break it, everything changes. I frowned. That does not explain anything. It explains everything, he replied. Of course it did not. Not yet. Frustration pressed against my ribs, but I forced myself to stay still. To listen. You think this is about control, he continued. About power. About ownership. Is it not? I asked. His gaze held mine, unblinking. No, the word landed quietly, but it carried more weight than anything else he had said so far. Then what is it about? I asked. He exhaled slowly, the first real sign of something human breaking through the control. Limits, he said. I tilted my head slightly. Yours? Mine, he confirmed. That did not make sense. Not with everything I had seen. Not with the way this entire world bent around him. You could have taken anything from me, I said. You still can. No, he said, his voice sharper now. Not loud. Just precise. That is exactly what I cannot do. Silence filled the space between us, thick and heavy. Why? I asked. The question came out quieter this time. Not demanding. Just, needing. He looked at me differently then. Not as a problem. Not as a solution. Something else. Something more complicated. Because the moment you become something I take, he said, you also become something they can use. My chest tightened. They? He did not answer that part. Not directly. This world, he said instead, runs on leverage. On pressure. On finding the one thing someone cannot afford to lose. I felt it then. The shift. The connection between everything he had not said before. And that is supposed to be me, I whispered. It already is, he replied. No hesitation. No softening. Just truth. I looked down at the photograph still resting on his desk, then back at him. So you married me to protect me from becoming leverage, I said slowly. Yes. But I am already leverage. Yes. The contradiction hit hard. Then what is the point of the rule? I asked. His gaze sharpened slightly, like this was the part that mattered most. The rule, he said, keeps you separate from everything they expect you to be. I frowned. I do not understand. He stepped closer then. Not touching. Never touching. But close enough that the distance felt intentional. If I treat you like something I own, he said, they will treat you the same way. My breath caught. But if I do not, he continued, his voice lower now, more controlled than ever, then you are not predictable. I stared at him, the meaning slowly unfolding in my mind. You are protecting me by, not claiming me. Yes. It sounded impossible. And yet, it was the first thing that made sense. I looked down at my hand, at the ring that still felt too heavy for something so quiet. But I am still here, I said. Still visible. Yes. Always yes. So what happens now? I asked. He did not answer immediately. Instead, his eyes flickered briefly to the photograph, then back to me. Now, he said, they will test the rule. A chill ran through me, subtle but real. And if it breaks? I asked. His jaw tightened just slightly, the smallest crack in his control so far. Then everything I was trying to prevent becomes inevitable. The room felt smaller again. The walls closer. The silence heavier. I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay steady. And what happens to me? He held my gaze for a long second. Long enough that I almost looked away. But I did not. That depends, he said quietly, on whether you remain something I protect, or become something I cannot. The words settled into me, sharp and undeniable. Not a threat. Not a promise. Just a line. And for the first time since this began, I understood the rule was never about distance. It was about survival. Not just mine. His too. And somehow, that made staying the most dangerous choice of all.